So, man, what did you think of the big fucking Games Workshop news today, man?
I didn't hear. What's the news?
They're bringing specialist games back, bro.
More time.
Mordheim, Necromunda, fucking Man of War, Battlefleet Gothic, Epic,
Dude, that's cool.
Inquisitor, Warmaster. Hey?
All that stuff. Like, are they new sculpts or what?
I don't know, bro, because as you know, it's like fucking... How long ago did they can specialist games? About 6 or 7 years?
Yeah,
Must be about 6 or 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
And
they didn't all at one time, did they? They didn't kill them off all at once, did they?
Yeah, well, they killed them off slowly, but then their releases became fewer and more far between, and slowly the product just got harder and harder to be able to sort of access, and then one day it was just a complete shutdown. Now, for whatever reason that happened, there's so much speculation on the internet, but who knows?
I remember that you could get PDFs of some of them.
Yeah.
But even that disappeared after a while, right?
Oh, yeah, I think it has. I think they've totally cleaned that out now. But I've got PDFs of all their living rulebooks. But to me, I mean, I've always been a big fan of the Warhammer and the Warhammer fantasy universes, but specialist games just had a whole another level of importance. To me it did. I love the specialist games. I mean, back in the day, Space Hulk was considered one of the specialist games. That's one of my favourite board games of all time. Space Hulk is the bomb. And me and my brother have been playing that since first edition.
So you have some old copies of it?
Yeah, my brother does, yeah. Those are some real old, pretty ugly plastics, but the game atmosphere, that game created an atmosphere that has never been rivaled in my eyes. I've got some pretty cool board games, but Space Hulk is, it's my forever favourite.
Yeah,
as far as board games go.
Man. It stands the test of time.
Yeah, totally. It dripped of atmosphere in an era where, we grew up on the Aliens franchise. I mean, Alien the movie was a great film, but Aliens, the second one with the colonial marines, that one just rocked my world as a young guy. I've watched it 100,000 times, and Space Hulk was our sort of our port of entry for being able to game in something similar.
That's what's so tragic about one of the many tragedies of my childhood is that we were obsessed with Alien, man. It was like one of our favorite movies. We didn't even know there was a Space Hulk game. We didn't know there was
Yeah, well...
It was a whole other thing that we didn't have,
Yeah, well, it was around about the same time as we discovered Blood Bowl. I think we covered in a previous conversation our sort of our entry points into the world of Games Workshop. And Blood Bowl was a big favourite. My cousin got it, and we all, we used to get around and play games of that, constantly in the weekends. And around that same time, my brother discovered Space Hulk, and he acquired Space Hulk. So it was a toss-up between Blood Bowl and Space Hulk as to whatever we'll be playing. This is back in first edition days, and just the best memories. And it was around that same time that Hero Quest, came out with the Milton Bradley / Games Workshop joint venture,
right?
And loved Hero Quest, and then later on Space Crusade. So we're all over that stuff as young teenagers. But specialist games to us sort of just our focus as gamers growing up in our later teenage years was pretty much, even though Warhammer 40k and fantasy were big parts of it, especially 40k. The specialist games like Man of War, Mighty Empires. Do you remember Mighty Empires? The big tile placement game it was like a grand strategic
People
fantasy.
Used it for like their campaigns and stuff like that.
Yeah, they did in the later years when they sort of re-released it about. Oh, that must be about 6 or 7 years ago now too.
Right.
And they did a sort of half-assed job of it. But the old Mighty Empires box set was amazing. From a strategic perspective for the fantasy players, just it was awesome.
I'll tell you a little story and a little confession too.
Yeah, man.
It was my first actual experience with Games Workshop stuff, not really even realizing it till later.
Mighty Empires.
No, it was Man of War.
Oh, Man of War.
See, what happened was my sister was she got married to a guy who was when I was probably 10 or 11. They started dating, and he was obsessed with games. He was a game designer. He wrote card games, board games, mostly just like he wrote rules, and I think he drew a few pictures and stuff like that. But he had boxes of Magic the Gathering cards.
Oh yeah.
And Dungeons and Dragons books, all kinds of just manuals and just all kinds. I don't even know what it was now. Just I knew back then this was like a treasure chest of things, that I'd never really seen before, but was intrigued by.
Yeah.
And he went off. He went off to I think the Marine Corps or the Army. He went into the Army, and pretty much gave all of his stuff to my sister to put.
He bequeathed his possessions unto thee.
No. He gave it to my sister to keep it safe while he went off to boot camp. Because he knew that his siblings probably would ransack his boxes, and he had some kind
One sec, bro. One sec. I've got to kill Facebook. It's going to drive me nuts.
Alright. I don't hear anything on my end.
Piss off Facebook. And I'm back. So, you're saying... So, carry on?
Alright, so my sister's boyfriend was going into the Army, and he had this 3 or 4 boxes, good moving boxes of cool stuff, Magic cards. I was a little kid, and I was sneaking out of my room in the middle of the night and going and sliding the garage door. It was a sliding door on the side of our garage, and I'd slide it open, sneak in there with a flashlight, and just like, what is all this stuff? And I thought there's boxes of cards here, and I'd take a few and take them and look them into my room, and then Mom and Dad would catch me with them.
Yep.
And throw them away, and my dad told my sister, tell him to get rid of those boxes. I don't like what's in them. So, anyway, one night I get to the bottom of this box, and it's little boats and these cards, and these little chits, and it's like whole, and you could see, but there's no rule book. He didn't have the rule book and he probably had it with him.
Yeah, took the rule book with him.
But all the components were there to play this game. So I never played it. Looked at it, and it was just like, what? Man, I'd love to know what this is. But he ended up coming back and getting his boxes, and I never got to find out what it was. But later on, years later, I see, when I get into miniatures and stuff, I'm looking around, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Those are those little boats. Those are those little cards. That's what that was. That was Man of War. It was a Games Workshop game. I was like, holy shit. I didn't know what it was. My computer says it's going to restart right now. Oh,
is it?
Hang on, later your PC will restart in one day.
Yeah, one day? We'll have the podcast finished by then,
I think
mate.
we'll be wrapped by 24 hours.
Yeah, we've got 24 hours and counting. From now.
Let's talk about what we came to talk about.
Yeah. Specialist games.
Oh, you want to talk about specialist games?
Yeah, let's carry on this conversation while we can, man. If we have to do 2 snaps, so be it.
Yeah, you can put them in the can.
Yeah.
That's one for later. All right, dude.
So carry on, man. Man of War.
Tell me something about Space Crusade. You said you played Space Crusade?
Oh, okay. Yes, Space Crusade was another Milton Bradley Games Workshop crossover that sort of followed in the wake of
Was that before Rogue Trader? Or was that...
No, this is post-Rogue Trader. This is still set in the Rogue Trader universe.
Okay.
So this is still 40k in its basic essence. It was post-Hero Quest. Milton Bradley coming to the scene with Games Workshop and experienced phenomenal success with
the fantasy game.
Yeah, with the fantasy game Hero Quest. So naturally, to milk the cash cow, they released shortly thereafter the Space Crusade release, which was it was a watered down 40k themed board game done in the same sort of style as the Hero Quest games were. You still had, well, if I recall correctly, because we had the sets as well, you had the Blood Angels, the Ultramarines, and the Imperial Fists, and then you had the forces of disorder or chaos or whatever, the sort of game master role, who look after all the bad guys. And they had one of the earliest renditions of the Necrons in that box set. They had orcs and grots, obviously. They also had a chaos element in there as well, and some Gene Stealers. So they'd really delved and taken different facets of the 40k universe and thrown
There were
them.
gene stealers and
Yeah, they were gene stealers. Yeah,
Okay.
it was a real token effort, but it was still super cool. I mean, that was one of our first sort of introductions into the realm of 40k as sort of our gateway drug. So that was Space Crusade. It wasn't as long lived as the Hero Quest franchise because they had a whole bunch of expansion releases. I'm sure you can remember to go with that, but it still did very well. And that sort of led on to Warhammer or Rogue Trader for us, which has already been around for a considerable amount of time. 40k eventually. It was still very much a niche hobby here in New Zealand, very much under the radar, but it was a growing hobby at least. Right. But anyway, that's sort of led on, and so we'd already involved in the Space Hulk scene, already involved in the Blood Bowl scene. That was around the same time that Dark Future by Richard Hallowell. The Dark Future, yeah, it's like a Mad Max board game. Yeah. It was awesome. Still is awesome.
A cool group on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. They seem to have a Facebook group for all of the old Specialist games these days.
Yep. Really active.
But Dark Future was real cool. Now, as a young fellow, I used to read a lot, and I still read a lot these days. But one of my favourite authors of the day was a guy by the name of Joe Dever. I'm not sure if you're ever familiar with the Lone Wolf Gamebook series.
No.
So, do you remember? Were you ever involved with the fighting fantasy scene by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone? They were game books. They're like a novel where sort of pick a path, choose a number, turn to the page.
Adventure?
Yeah, like that, but just a bit more of a fantasy oriented one. Because I'd been reading those since I was sort of 7 or 8. Since they first started coming into the country, fighting fantasy led to Lone Wolf. Lone Wolf led to eventually a Highway Warrior, which was one of Joe Dever's later game book series, and that was based in that sort of post-apocalyptic, American setting. The roadway, the Road Warriors, and Dark Future was like sort of the next evolution. Taking that game book series and turn it into a tabletop game through Games Workshop. It was just fantastic. So Space Hulk to Blood Bowl to Dark Future. We discovered Mighty Empires in the Man of War system.
Okay, go ahead. I was going to ask about Mighty Empires, what it was exactly. It used to be based on sort of hexagonal tiles. It was an empire building game. The sort of set in the grander Warhammer universe, the fantasy universe. It was Catan, but
yeah, in a way, yeah, a lot like that. I can't remember too much about it because this is going back. This is really testing the memory, but I just remember having hours of fun with Mighty Empires. I was gutted to see that go. If that comes back with the new Specialist games, then mate, I'm all for it.
Okay, was War Master?
War Master came later.
A specialist game?
Yeah, that's definitely a Specialist game because what I'm talking about at the moment with Space Hulk, Blood Bowl, Mighty Empires, Man of War, Dark Future, all these sort of. This goes back even further to the original Judge Dredd systems that they created and Chainsaw Warrior. They had a predecessor even to Blood Bowl, and they had a bunch of board games as well. One of them I remember fondly being Trolls in the Pantry. This is going right back because Games Workshop started very humble beginnings, selling sort of board games and game systems out of the back of a van. But anyway, so I sort of consider all these the first generation of Specialist games. But along, as time went on and we got deeper and deeper into the hobby, and we start growing up and we get jobs and we have more disposable income to spend on this plastic crack addiction. Along came another generation of Specialist games, of which we saw the likes of Gorka Morka, Necromunda, eventually Mordheim, Inquisitor, which is one of my favourite systems to this day, even though it was designed for 54 mil, designed by Gavin Thorpe. Fantastic system. That's one I really hope they bring back as well. In my honest opinion, it worked really well for 28mm. Although I had a bunch of the 54mm sculpts, it was that much harder to sort of get into Inquisitor because of that scale difference. I think, obviously with larger figures, you need a larger gaming area. Yeah. You need larger terrain, and when you've already got a sizable 28mm force, it just made it that much more difficult to get involved in it. It worked very well for 28mm, however, especially when considering we had 4, 5, 6 armies already set in for the 40k universe. War Master with its 10mm offerings was a fantastic alternative entry into the world of Warhammer Fantasy. There was
10mm.
Yeah, that was 10mm. Yeah, it came in strips. I've still got a bunch of orcs around here somewhere. But then we sort of come on to even the later specialist games, Battlefleet Gothic, which to date is still one of my favourite games of all time. It's massive spaceship armada battles in the 40k space universe. Love that game. Can't wait for that to come back, if it ever comes back. Obviously, Blood Bowl continued right throughout, and whereas some specialist games sort of dissolved and went their own way, Dark Future disappeared, and Man of War eventually disappeared, and all these other ones, there were some specialist games that lasted, stood the test of time. Epic was a fantastic specialist game. Started in the
6mm, right? Little tiny.
Yeah, 6mm. It started with Space Marine, which was awesome. Adeptus Titanicus. This is going back quite a long way. Then I think Adeptus Titanicus came first. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. Then it became Space Marine. Then it became the Epic system, and went through a number of iterations as Epic 40,000, eventually Epic Armageddon. And still has a massive international following even to today. It's one of the largest. That and Blood Bowl probably remain two of the largest specialist games that are consistently played around the world. They still host big international tournaments every year, and their communities on Facebook are very active even to this day. So there's still a ton of resources out there for specialist gamers, those who want to sort of delve into alternative aspects of the Games Workshop intellectual property without having to invest in thousands of dollars worth of 28mm 40k or fantasy figures. So yeah, that's a little bit on specialist games. So anyway, Games Workshop in their infinite wisdom sort of leaked it a couple of days ago, and it went viral on Facebook and a number of other internet forums, and that was sort of confirmed today. That specialist games, which closed down about 6 or 7 years ago, I could be wrong, sort of shut its doors for the last time, apparently, announced they were sort of coming back. Obviously the shareholders saw the benefits and the advantages, the profits that so many other little tag-along companies who were, developed or created solely to provide or fill a gap and provide figures for these excellent systems which continue to be loved around the world to this day. Epic is, how many companies out there are doing 6mm proxies for Warhammer Epic? There's hundreds. How many other companies are doing proxies for orcs that could be used in Gorka Morka, or alternative sci-fi gangs for Necromunda, which is another. Necromunda was huge. Then you've got the spin-off of the old Mordheim game system. You've got so many iterations of that these days, of which Frostgrave, which is just a recent newcomer to the scene, has become such a massive point of interest for gamers who love a bit of sort of fantasy skirmish, that whole campaign development, hero development, that narrative gaming storyline.
Yeah, I've heard somebody even on Facebook describe Frostgrave as like this generation's Mordheim.
Yeah, it's like Mordheim on crack.
When I saw the plastics that Frostgrave was putting out, that was the first thing I thought. I was like, that's going to be people's Mordheim warbands. But
yeah,
I haven't really heard much about Mordheim. Everything's just been Frostgrave.
Yeah, well, Mordheim is the sort of spiritual predecessor to Frostgrave.
Right.
Well, in my opinion. Now, one of the most exciting things about this announcement for me is purely from the sculptural perspective. The necromancy or the bringing back to life of all these long lost miniature lines, because there's so many companies out there doing metals, plastics, resin figures, but if Games Workshop does anything right, it's their plastic lines, it's their metal lines of miniatures. In my eyes, you can't beat the original in a lot of instances. Sure, there's great alternatives out there, but if they're talking about bringing back Mordheim or Battlefleet Gothic or Necromunda, the prospect of having these once long thought of as dead, deceased, buried lines coming back to the forefront, for me is just it's got win written all over it.
And what do you think they're going to do as far as Games Workshop? Do you think they're going to bring back old molds and resell old stuff, or?
I'm not sure. I have no idea.
Maybe just rule books, Maybe
they've definitely got the rule systems all down pat. It's just a matter of reviving the old files. But if they were to play it smart, I'd like to see a whole bunch of sort of updated, renewed miniature lines. Well, bring back the old ones, make them available, but bring everything back. Bring everything up to spec with, in line with the current releases from competitors.
Right.
Grow the lines. Put a bit of faith in them, put a bit of investment behind them, and make sure that they last another 10, 20, 30 years. Don't just rest on your laurels and think, well, hey, these were good enough back in the day. We'll just re-release what we got. Actually put a bit of money where your mouth is and see these things develop through to a deeper fruition. That's what I'd like to see. Whether that happens or not, I have no idea. But the whole prospect for me, with the renewal of Specialist Games, just had me squeeing all over the show today, mate. It's exciting times, and I know that there must be a lot of companies out there who, for a number of years, have been developing proxy lines.
Yeah, think of all the Blood Bowl.
Yeah,
you could thousands, man. There's thousands of figures out there.
I imagine there'll be more than a few companies out there that are sort of maybe a little more cautious tonight, or sleeping a little less easy. I don't know. You've got all these void companies that have been filling that 6mm epic void for so long, and sort of getting away with the argument that, well, hey, Games Workshop don't do it, so technically we're allowed to do it, which is still a copyright issue. If Games Workshop are coming back in and are reinforcing their IP, then I think we're going to see some action, some litigation in certain situations.
Think of how much they would have to do. How many lawyers would they have to hire? That's a lot of work, man.
It is a lot of work, but if there's any company that's proven time and time again that they're willing to go that distance, Games Workshop sort of it. They are the big player. They are the big player in our industry. They always have been, and I think I'm not a GW fanboy by any stretch of the imagination. I love their IP, I love their figures, but the company, as far as I'm concerned, have just lost the plot. They've got rid of their old guard, all the great personalities that made their company over the years, and just replaced them with a lot of hopefuls who, obviously have a lot of promise in time to come, but, a lot of the old guard's gone. A lot of the original talent's gone, and what made that company real special is gone, and, with the continual price hikes on a year-by-year basis, it's almost like Games Workshop has priced themselves into oblivion, which is probably one of the big reasons why so many people are turning their back on 28mm as a scale for these sort of sci-fi or fantasy prospects, and going 15mm. I mean, look at this resurgence, or the growth in 15mm that's been experienced over the last couple of years, or even 6mm. People are finding, with harder times in the economy, people seem to be looking for more bang for their buck.
Yeah.
And whereas you can spend $30 New Zealand on a single miniature, using Finecast or whatever, or you can invest $30 into a 15mm range and get a whole platoon. It's just money speaks, money talks, eh? So it's going to be very interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, anything Games Workshop's going to bring back is going to be expensive.
Oh, it is, man. But
That's one thing you know.
oh yeah, it's going to be expensive, but it's also going to be real exciting.
Yeah.
You know, I just look at what they've done with Space Hulk these last couple of iterations. Um, Exciting times.
Do you have the new Space Hulk?
Yeah, I do. Well, no, sorry, not the brand new, not the latest one, but the one prior. The first sort of relaunch was, oh, it must have been about,
2009.
yeah, it would have been about 2009. I've got that one. I got a couple of boxes of that.
I got mine. It was awesome.
That's cool, and I made sure I got a bunch of Dark Angel Terminators and Terminators from other chapters as well to sort of throw in that box for times when you want to mix it up a little bit.
Like another box of Terminators to put in there, just to have a few extra, but they're Blood Angels.
Oh, Blood Angels as well?
Games. I got Ashley to play that, and she played it again and again. I think we played it maybe like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, Space Hulk's a classic, mate.
Awesome. I even got the Hearst molds. I was going to do a 3D. It would weigh a ton.
Yeah, we'll weigh a ton, but man, it'll be awesome. Yeah, so yeah, I've got a squad of Wolfguard. I got a squad of Dark Angels. Deathwing. Squad of the Blood Angels. I've got to get my hands on some Ultramarine Termies. I want to sort of represent the core chapters. But Space Hulk for me to this day still remains a heavy favourite. But in saying that, mate, I'm looking forward to them all coming back because there hasn't been one specialist game which I haven't delved into at some point in time and got all kinds of nerd excited over. So it's
Mordheim does it for me, dude. The Mordheim rulebook.
Yeah,
it's golden, man.
Good times, man. Good times.
Mm-hmm.